Hello and welcome to GCV Analytics webinar. Today we are going to be talking about the telecoms sector, and I am delighted to be at the Telefónica headquarters here in Madrid, Spain, along with our guest speaker, Agustín. Agustín is the head of Telefónica Open Innovation, and he's been in charge of working with startups over the past how many years?
I think it's been already 8 years.
8 years.
So, yeah.
8 years, and he's held different positions at Wayra, such as strategic partnership manager, global portfolio investors relationships manager. He's also advised on mergers and acquisitions as well as block trades. Also assisted the board of directors at Telefónica, and in terms of his academic background, he holds an executive MBA from IESE Business School. So, Agustín, thanks so much for doing this webinar with us, and thanks so much for having us at your office, at your home here.
No, it's an honor. Yeah, I'm happy to have you here, and I'm also glad to take part in this webinar from Global Corporate Venturing, and I'm eager to go through the presentation with you and tackle all the questions that you or our audience might be having.
Terrific.
So, thanks so much.
Terrific. Before we go into that, I'm just going to briefly give the word to our founder and editor-in-chief, James Mawson, for a few introductory remarks. Jim?
Okay, well, thank you very much for that introduction, Kaloyan, and it's a great pleasure to be back on one of these regular webinars after a summer lull off as everyone returns from their holidays. And Agustín, let me add my thanks for you to be able to join us. It's really so important for us to get the insights and analysis that you can bring, particularly on the telecom sector, given how important I think Telefónica is, particularly in some of the emerging markets in Latin America. And I will add one extra thing, which is a great pleasure and honor for us and me personally, which is that, in partnership with Telefónica and your Wayra units in Latin America, we will be developing out our survey this year, which is looking at the corporate venturing community around the world. But one of the areas that I think we've been particularly keen to understand more of is how different geographies, how different regions take on their own corporate venturing identity. And I think we've been super excited by the development and growth in Latin America in particular, and that's been almost primarily due to, I think, the importance of Wayra. So our annual survey, which we'll send around to listeners at the end of this call, is a great honour to say is in partnership not just with Wayra, but a number of the trade associations around the world, including the NBCA in the US, JBCA in Japan, Argentina, Chile, in partnership with the government in Canada, and will be with a host of others, so that we really start to segment and identify the analysis. The work that came out of last year's survey has already led to government action in Japan in order to help improve that ecosystem, as they were able to identify differences or points that could be improved within the local ecosystem. So we'll be in Tokyo in 2 weeks' time, I think, for the Asia Congress there. So enough of mention about that. To give you some context about what we do on this webinar, but more broadly about global corporate venturing, it's a trade paper. We're fundamentally asking 2 questions: who does corporate venturing and what do they do? That's part of a suite of publications we do, including covering university startups and spin-outs from faculty and students, an impact venturing title, which is in collaboration with the major governments and non-government organizations such as USAID. And that's part of a sort of a broader suite, as well as a trade paper and events that we do in these webinars that helps identify the data about who does corporate venturing and what do they do, which helps form GCV Analytics, which Kaloyan very kindly leads. And that's part of the academy, again, that helps train the next generation of superstars. And altogether, it's packaged under what we call the GCV Leadership Society, to help make sure that ultimately we make the world a better place through better value-added engagement with the entrepreneurs that are really changing and improving. So, next slide, please. And so within sort of the GCV ecosystem, we do a number of events. I mentioned the one coming up in Tokyo in a couple of weeks. Next week, the week before, we will have our GCV Synergize event in New York. We've obviously got our sort of events in Brazil in mid-October in Sao Paulo in partnership with the government there with ABB CAP. Energy-focused event in Houston and Texas. And we're very reliant on, obviously, the local support from the ecosystem and sponsorship, as well as those who attend. So thank you in advance to all those. And that will all lead up at the start of the new year to our largest event in California, in Monterey, which where we'll be presenting the results of the survey, and where we will also be having our Rising Stars and Emerging Leaders list. And together we'll have about 850 corporate leaders. They represent companies probably in around $10 trillion of aggregate annual revenue and about 200 billion of venture assets under management. So it's a great community, great gathering. So next slides, please. And so obviously mentioned about sort of GCV analytics in partnership for understanding and showcasing the data, and great work about not just the deals done directly by corporate venturers, but also their indirect investments or limited partner commitments they make to VC funds, and how broadly it fits in to their open innovation toolset and their innovation strategies that they have. We've been delighted to partner and work with Cubics Analytics over in Silicon Valley to help bring to life the community. So to learn more, please do go to info@globalcorporateventuring.com. And I'll be quiet now because I think the insights coming from you, Kaloyan, and certainly from you, Agustín, about some of the data and some of the trends that we see more broadly in this sector will be fascinating. So I will hand it back to you, Kaloyan.
Thanks, Jim. So let's get right into it. When we talk about the telecoms sector, first of all, let's just have a brief overview of what our definition is. So basically, what we understand by telecom sector is something that encompasses telecom service providers, wireless technology more broadly, and other telecoms related techs and services. And when we talk about that sector, I suppose the number one thing that we must keep in mind is that it's a very dynamic sector, which is characterized by high capital requirements and very high competition. It's an extremely competitive sector, and the level of disruption that we have seen in this sector is truly amazing in the sense of that some of the traditional telecom services have been already taken over by certain disruptors. If we think about things like text messaging, almost no one sends text messages nowadays. We tend to use either WhatsApp, Viber, or Line, depending on which part of the world we're in, but or WeChat if you happen to be in China, of course. But it's one of the core services that seems to have been seriously disrupted. Here I would like to bring in our guest and ask what is the kind of potential disruptions and disruptors that you, Agustín, are seeing in the making among the young early stage startups that you're working with?
Mm-hmm. So Kaloyan, I think the telco industry was one of the first sectors that were disrupted in the first decade of the 2000th century with the rising of all those services that you were mentioning. So I think doing open innovation is something that we started maybe before many other traditional industries. When it comes to disruptors and innovations that we can be getting from our open innovation units, I think we're looking for two different dimensions. One of it is like incremental innovation. That's maybe things that are more tactic and that can help our business units to achieve their short-term results under pressure. I think this is important because you have
short-term meaning within 5 years.
No, even earlier. At least I'm talking about Telefónica and Telefónica's open innovation strategy. but I think everyone who's doing open innovation at the big corporations, yeah, it's like, yeah, you have to do this, but I think there's a kind of hype with startups, and if you deep dive on that, I'm not sure that many of those corporations that are doing open innovation are achieving results. So for us, it's important doing tactical innovation, meaning the short term and 1 year term, because it really helps our business units to achieve their short-term results and improve their revenues. And I think that's a kind of saying to your company, to your mother company, hey guys, I'm really helping business in order to deliver and deliver better. And the other,
the top line.
yeah, that's it. And the other dimension is more disruptive innovation. So, and it's about building a shop window for your company to know which are the trends in the industry. And in that regard, and getting back to your question, I think nowadays what we're looking for and what we're finding through startups are nice technologies and solutions around next generation networks, which is critical and is our main asset. So for us, that's important. For sure, also about mobile edge computing and everything that might allow telcos to offer and support new services that are coming through low latency capabilities. Also, when it comes to 5G use cases like connected cars or artificial reality and virtual reality, for us, input coming from innovators and small companies is critical. And also specific technologies that maybe we didn't know how they would be applied to our business when we first heard about them, like blockchain. Now, I think the Open Innovation Unit was the first one in most of the telcos that started doing things around blockchain and brought that knowledge into the company. So that's the kind of disruptive innovation that we're looking for and that we're bringing to Telefónica.
Right. Yeah. So basically 2 dimensions, a short-term tactical one and a longer-term more strategic one.
This is something unique.
Name it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's it. I'm not sure if everyone does it the same way, but for us, and when it comes to Wayra, with so many local hubs operating and investing in startups, it's important doing that tactical innovation short term that we mentioned. Yeah.
Great. And you already mentioned 5G and the advent of 5G in 2020, as it's expected to roll out in 2020, by the end of 2020, in most developed countries or the most developed economies. So that's generally a reason for somewhat of a cautious optimism amongst telecoms company leaders, if the most recent surveys are to be believed. And according to the data that I cite here, there's 72 operators that are currently testing 5G offerings, and 25 wireless operators are expected to launch such services by the end of this year. This is according to Deloitte's data. So you know, when 5G seems to be such an important milestone for the entire industry to achieve, I would like to ask you, like, what part of the innovation you're helping boost at Telefónica Open Innovation has to do with 5G, or are there startups whose potential success may be driven in a way or contingent on 5G technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are great solutions that should be going through 5G capabilities. I think the market, or at least in Telefónica's markets, which, as Jim said at the beginning of this webinar, are mainly Europe and Latin America, there's still a way to be walked in the rollout of that technology. And so we found great small startups or early stage startups that have value propositions around technologies and sectors that we mentioned before, like connected car or artificial reality and virtual reality, that are still no big businesses. I think everyone's still struggling to find like the best business model in order to monetize the upgrades of network. But what we're bringing from the open innovation side is like many use cases in Telefonica to be prepared once this is massively commercial. Yeah, we can start to bring that to our end customers. I think, yeah, as of today, and again, I'm talking about Europe and emerging countries footprint, there's no operator who's bringing 5G capacities on a
full scale.
On a full scale. It's just like in certain cities, and but yeah, I've never seen. I don't think there's still a portfolio of 5G services. So what we're bringing.
Something yet to come, right?
Yeah, it's yet to come, and yeah, what we want is to be prepared. So what's good is that our IT guys and our and our network guys already know which are the services that the markets, and not only from a global perspective, but also from a local perspective, because I really think in order to differentiate your offer and being successful, you really have to listen to end users. That's what we're bringing to Telefonica. So they know what's happening, and they know what services are arising, and they know what markets are demanding. So no specific solution that's global, but yeah.
That's great.
That's what we're bringing.
And just because when we talk about 5G, you always have like a bunch of subsectors or a bunch of verticals that are always mentioned, whether it's connected cars, whether it's connected or smart homes or IoT. Are there any other interesting areas of innovation that you observe in the telecom sector other than those usual suspects? Anything else that maybe perhaps we journalists haven't been able to identify that well? I'm just looking for the perspective of an investor here.
Yeah, I think the 5G discussion and all the big noise that we've been
definitely
has really put on the papers and brought to the papers what's happening around 5G and which are the main issues. I think, I said before, everything around software-defined networks, it's super important to us, and as said, next generation networks. In terms of other applications that 5G technology might be having, is the ones that you mentioned. I would maybe add up e-health and also everything around telemedicine, which is also important. But yeah, mainly I think it's about mobility, about augmented reality, also gaming, which is super attractive sector in terms of volume and in terms of willingness to pay from the end user. It's super exciting, and the 5G I think will be a really game changer.
Absolutely. And speaking of gaming and 5G and all that, ultimately it all comes down to the increased usage of data, of internet data on our phones. And if recent surveys are to be believed, in the States, 37% of people already have unlimited data plans, and so that was data for 2018, and that figure was up from just 25% in the previous year. So there's definitely a bit of a problem there for telecoms, because as providers compete to give customers these sort of ever lower prices on their data plans, the average revenue per user decreases, and that puts your profit margins under strain, so to speak, or the profit margins of your parent company, rather. So one of the possible solutions that are kind of obvious would obviously be things like consolidations, partnerships, and especially in areas related to content and cable. So I just wanted to ask you, because you guys are present in over 400 startups in 16 countries, probably even more, and about 20% of them work with the corporate parent Telefónica. So in terms of having some sort of a partnership with a parent company. So Would you be able to tell us a bit about how those sort of startups get selected to be partners of Telefonica, and how that improves their financials, their ability to monetize, and their ability to serve their customers?
Sure. So yeah, it's a super good question. So I think in terms of telecom market and global market, and from a core business perspective, from a telco core business perspective, as you say, partnership strategy will be key in order to succeed. That's like, as you were saying, for example, when it comes to video, many telcos have been or have partnered with the main now video providers and content providers that emerged in the last 2 years, and specifically talking about Netflix and others. And yeah, that's important, but that's more from a corporate perspective. When it comes to startups and to open innovation, I think we've got two different models in Telefonica. One is we're becoming shareholders of those companies, so we're investing in those 500 companies that you mentioned, and I really believe that when you become a partner and talking again, being a shareholder, it's a game changer when it comes to the corporate approach and to the corporate behavior with the startups. So you might have open innovation programs that can attract talent and can attract good solutions, but the business units really change their approach if they know that those companies are now part of your group. And yeah, we've got the two models. Our main one is the investment by investing on the companies. We also are working with non-participated companies, but for us, yeah, investing is differential. Because yeah, I think in the past 6-7 years, most of the innovation markets and the venture capital markets which were newborn, now are more transparent. There are platforms such as you guys that are bringing light to the sector, so it's easier to find talent and to find those companies.
Right.
So it's not so much about being able to detect them, it's more about building a good value proposition for those companies. When it comes to working with them, I think if you have sophisticated procedures and processes in order to detect that talent and in order to detect those startups and to invest into them, it works. And I will maybe later go through the processes that we follow in order to ensure that that fit exists between the startup and the corporate. But yeah, we are mainly focused on doing business development with them, growing with them, and both from two different sides. One is commercial side, so including their solutions in our commercial portfolio, so reselling their solutions. And the other perspective is using them internally and bringing operational efficiencies and savings for our operations.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, win-win. Both of them win-win. And since when you're selecting well, those companies are achieving big business with you. They're scaling well with you. They're scaling faster. And when it comes to exits and when it comes to finding further investors, even though I know in the market it's like the rumor or the saying that corporates, we are like the ugly guys in the disco.
Yeah, there's a bit of a bias.
Yeah, it's a bit of a bias, but I think it's not so. So it really, yeah, you bring them 100 millions of customers to their reach. They can use your commercial channels to scale. Also, they can leverage your internal processes. And yeah, and I have figures that really support that. So, for example,
value to it.
Yeah, we have exited more than 60 companies in the past years with some APOs. So yeah, we really think it brings value. And when we see big boys in the blog, like big venture capital funds in North America investing in our portfolio, even though there are companies that they have no operations in Latin America. I think, yeah, that makes us kind of proud, because I think it was because of working with Telefonica why these guys achieved visibility and scale. So, yeah.
Great. Moving along with our presentation of the data here. So the reason why 5G could help certain new innovative businesses scale is obviously the higher speed and the low latency. And we already really mentioned and touched on the sort of areas that it's expected to boost: the Internet of Things, smart cities, connected vehicles, augmented and virtual reality, which in and of itself has various applications spanning from autonomous vehicles and virtual training and innovative ed tech to remote healthcare provision and even e-commerce retailer sort of virtual experience kind of thing. So the possibilities there seem to be really almost endless. Also, mobile health, mobile payments, the potential of blockchain technology, which you touched on, whether it's for ensuring secure connectivity and cybersecurity, or streamlining internal processes for telecoms, and streamlining costs, of course, and bringing further efficiency. So once again, are there any other observations on all these technologies that I've just sort of briefly outlined? Any sort of observations on those additional observations that you have that you would like to share with our audience?
I think, Kaloyan, that we already covered that. I think, so as said before, now it's the time to find proper business models that can sustain investment in that type of technologies and that type of solutions. So that's what everybody's struggling with. And since there's no commercial launch of 5G, 5G networks, is a bit like the chicken and egg problem. We've got good services, but yeah, everyone's still waiting for that upgrade to happen. Yeah, so yeah, no specific observation.
All right, still something in the making kind of thing. Yeah. And before I go into the data on corporate venturing, per se, I'd also briefly like to mention that there's been some interesting developments on the political and regulatory side of things for telecoms, and these developments really vary greatly from one region to another. We've had the repeal of net neutrality in the United States, which is being disputed in some states currently as we speak. And in contrast to that, of course, we had the removing of roaming charges within the European Union, where we are right now. So, yeah, that probably was a bit of a harsh blow for telecoms at first.
Sure.
Yeah. And then, most recently on the news, and a bit of a sensational way, we saw the ban of Huawei devices and network equipment in the US, in the UK, and I think one other country, I can't remember at the moment. We saw the arrest of the company CFO in Canada, and the unprecedented revocation of Huawei's Android license. So that was a bit of a sensationalist development. But since we're talking about telecoms, there's no way I can just go without mentioning it.
Absolutely.
But in any case, let's move on to.
I think that proves how strategic and how important is this sector.
Yeah.
Not only just to economy and to digital economies, but to life and to end users. So as you said, removing roaming charges in Europe, might hurt the P&L of the telco industry. But I think for European telcos, for us, achieving like a single common market is also important, and that will give us a scale and reach. And that's one a toll that we will have to pay. But I'm talking more from my personal view. But I think it's important to be part of that and to build a solid block of countries. So,
right. Yeah. And speaking of countries, on to the next slide. Here we try to summarize that basically over the past 12 months, well, actually between August last year and July this year, we saw 220 deals backed by telecoms corporates around the world. Significant number of them, 85 in US-based startups, some Japanese-based, China-based, India, Israel, the UK, and other parts of Europe, as you can see. So, so I'd really like to ask you to touch a bit on your international outreach, because Telefónica is a truly global company. And in what country, just if you could just briefly mention in what countries you're present, and what are the sort of countries where you find interesting tech and business models being developed and emerging.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so Telefónica is operating in almost in 17 countries. We sold in the summer our Central America business. So I'm not sure if it's 17 or 18, but it should be around that. And as said, in Central America, so I'm starting from Mexico, I'm going down to South America in almost every country, or the biggest ones. And here in Europe, we've got Telefónica, who's the leading telco in Spain, O2 in the UK, and O2 in Germany, which are the mobile also leading companies in B2C sectors. And since when we do open innovation, we very much leverage our business units, because as we were discussing at the beginning of our talk, we really try to bring short-term, or we want to have like short-term delivery with them, bringing those capacities or technologies that they're missing in order to achieve the short-term results. So that makes us that makes us work very close to each of the OBs. That's why we are present in the main countries in which Telefónica is operating. We're investing in all the countries that I said in Latin America and the 3 in Europe. And I think it's good for us because each of them is good in a specific sector. So, for example, the UK is very good for sure in fintech solutions, and also e-commerce, media. So we like to be there, and we are able to invest in good things and take them to the rest of our footprint. In Germany, we've got good solutions. We've got also industrial IoT, which it's really relevant to us since we've got the biggest part of our business is coming from the B2B sector. What I mean, so we can take from one country to another. And on top of that, we also want to be in the innovation hubs that we think are relevant, which is the Silicon Valley and Israel, and we also want to keep an eye on China. Right. We're not investing there actively, but we've got an office there, and we do through partnerships try to have reach. And we try to have reach, and we collaborate with the big Chinese players in order to know what they're doing and know what they're investing in, and we also share our portfolio, and so they know what's happening in our footprint.
Right. Great. And now, if we go back to these 220 global deals. If we break them down by sectors, we see that there's a great number of investments in IT startups. So within the IT startups, we have things like cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, big data, even chips and semiconductors. So the sort of things you would expect a telecom to invest in. Now, one might notice that telecoms is all the way to the right-hand side of the graph here. It's because there are a relatively few startups that we observe that are pure play telecoms, because normally if you're a developer of an AI technology, you're really an IT company and you sell to more, you will likely try to sell to more customers than just telecom operators. So hence it's a matter of semantics here, but I'm just trying to explain to the audience why this graph shows what it really does. And then again, we have other investments in things like services, things like logistics, real estate tech, edtech, accommodation, and travel. In financial, it's primarily in payment and payment-related technologies, and in consumer, I'd say fairly expectedly, it's mostly around e-commerce.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing. And transport, of course, goes without saying. It's in connected vehicles and the like. Now, on the following spider sort of diagram that we've done here, we see an example of co-investments of telecoms corporates across really a wide range of enterprise. If you think about it, we have Utility, which is a smart grid tech company. We have Precision Hawk, which is a drone platform. We have cybersecurity developers like CounterTac. We have connected vehicles like Mojo. We have holography and augmented reality like Magic Leap and Light Field Lab, and so on and so forth. So a very, very big variety of sort of investments. So does this spider diagram surprise you in any way? Is Telefónica also interested to invest in such a wide range of areas? From what you said previously, it does seem to be really the case.
Yeah, it does, and it doesn't surprise me. This slide, neither the previous one with the different sectors. I think the good part of being a telco is that we are providing connectivity and enabling digital services to all those different industries, which kind of gives us a right to play with other industries and other corporates. So because I'm providing you connectivity, I'm also entitled to sell you cybersec products around your digital assets and your company's perimeter. The same when it comes to mobility and to any of the industries that you were mentioning before. So that's why I think, and that's why you can see as such a wide range and as such a diverse investment areas of interest within the telco industry. And it really depends on the region on which you are operating. So, for example, in Asia, they're doing much more e-health things that we're doing, and maybe Telefónica is not so much focused on that. We do not have like a strategic unit for e-health because it's not important to us. But yeah, that's
or not yet.
Or not yet. Yeah, but for sure. And when you've got open innovation tools, you can also make like small bets on things that might be not relevant to your company right now, but might be relevant tomorrow.
Creating optionality.
It's optional. Yeah, that's it. Absolutely.
All right. So moving along with our presentation here. Now, if we do look at the investments of telecom corporates over the years, that we do see that there was an increase in terms of the total dollars. This is total dollars in all the 200 plus rounds that we see respectively for 2017 and 2018 here. This is not just corporate money. This is the sum total of all the dollars. So we do see that there was a slight increase from 34.5 to 35.6 billion in total, and whereas the number of deals has stayed more or less the same, it does appear that 2019 will likely probably be just as stable. Well, we are not there yet, but it's most likely seems like it's going to be that way on this chart. But I just wanted to ask you, because currently there's much talk of an impending correction in the business cycle in the global economy, and are you noticing as an investor any sort of a slowdown, whether it's in deal making or in early stage startups struggling to raise funding more than usual, or in some sort of valuation corrections? Are you observing anything of the sort at this moment?
Yeah, not really. So I think as you say that the amount of investment is still increasing since I think venture capital wasn't so dynamic or such a hot topic some years ago.
Right.
it was for telcos, since I said, yeah, we were disrupted earlier than other telcos. But I think the big hype around startups and venture capital, you can still feel it. You can still see how many first-time funds are now raising their second or the third fund. I don't think that venture capital industry is the best thermometer to follow like the overall economic situation.
Right.
Because yeah, I think I don't want to call it a bubble because I don't think there's a bubble. But yeah, it's a new industry and everyone's putting money on that. And on the other side, when your company P&L is being hurt, many of the reactions is like investing more in open innovation and in startups, so that you can find ways to sort out that.
All right. If we have a look at the top investors over the 12 months we covered in our most recent report, we do see SoftBank with its gigantic SoftBank Vision Fund and several other venturing subsidiaries that it has. Was the number one investor in terms of both money and
sure.
And
no one can compete with SoftBank.
Deals,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right, and
100 billion. Wow.
Entity document. Well, Telefónica is still on the top list.
Yeah,
with a much smaller number of at least disclosed deals, because I know you guys don't disclose every single deal you do. But I just wanted to ask you, like in terms of SoftBank becoming such an important player and sort of blurring the lines between venture capital and private equity, what's your take on their gigantic vision fund and the second one that they have just announced recently?
Well, I think they're the cool guys now with such a big amount, such big pockets. I think we're playing different games to SoftBank. I think SoftBank Vision Fund, they're pursuing a financial return and they're investing they're in startups heavily in order to conquer markets and to build market leaders. Which is not
working.
It seems to be working, yeah. I think, and for sure it will work in many of those cases. Maybe not in all of those. When it comes, to the big investment funds, which are also looking for financial return, I think those guys might have been impacted by having such a big investor in the new investor. All of a sudden. And it affects us because they launched this Latin American fund of 5 billion. In the end, I think it's good. We're investing more in search of innovation, not for financial returns. We're investing in earlier stages that they do. And I think, SoftBank might be the proper partner for us in order to do follow-ons on our investments. They have a much more broader scope, so I don't think they can be fine-tuning their search in specific things as we do. So I think we're complementary, and I like having them on the table and putting their money. But I think it's different games, but both of them complementary. So
cool. And if we have a look at the top corporate investors from telecoms corporates and other corporates from other sectors in telco businesses, pure play telco startups, so we see players like Qualcomm, Cisco, and even e-commerce firm Rakuten. So I guess this one is kind of, I'm not very surprised, not much of a surprising list here either. In terms of the development of pure play telecom businesses, and we do see that there's a relatively small number of them overall that we register. We do see that there's been a bit of a drop over the past few years, but it seems like in 2019 they might rebound. But we are yet to see what might happen. But again, probably a lot of the deal flow that's going on is not even publicly disclosed. So this is not pertinent data. If we look at very briefly at this diagram, I know we're kind of running out of time almost. But if we look at very briefly at this spider diagram, it illustrates co-investments in telecom enterprises, and it's very diverse pure play telecom enterprises. Now, I do remember you mentioned to me that you guys invested in Sigfox, which is an IoT network. So would you tell us briefly about that investment, and then I could wrap up with the rest of the presentation as quickly as I can.
Sure, I will try to be brief. I know I talk too much, so
no. It's great. It's just, we try to keep the webinar within more or less 1 hour.
Yeah, but there are a lot of interesting topics that you covered. So I would love to do. I could stay for ages. So yeah, when it comes to Sigfox, I think this is an investment that we did. I'm not sure if it was 2015 or 2016. I think Telefónica was not the only telco that entered that final investment round of Sigfox. I think SKT in South Korea also invested there. And I think that is one of the good examples of the learnings that can be coming from the venture capital portfolio of telcos. And I think, yeah, Sigfox is, as you said, an alternative network for IoT connectivity, which brings a lot of value in terms of connected objects. I'm not sure if that's the bet that all the telcos are doing, but yeah, it's a good technology, and we've learned a lot of that out of that investment. I think, yeah, we've been using that in Latin America, in specific countries in Latin America. And yeah, I really like the company. I really like the team behind Sigfox.
Awesome. All right, and moving along, this is a table of the top deals by telecoms corporates. Actually, all 10 of them we see that they're SoftBank deals. For those in the audience who would like to read more on those deals, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching the recorded version, you'll probably get to have the latest issue of our magazine and read about them in more detail. Now, let's briefly go over exits, because we also try to track exits that involve a corporate, whether as sometimes as an acquirer, whether it's just as an exiting investor. So over the 12 months that we're reviewing in this report, we did see 32 exits for telecoms investors, 21 acquisitions, 9 IPOs, 2 mergers. Obviously, we did have some notable IPOs like Uber, for example, that because you had SoftBank there. So probably the dollar number is slightly a bit over the top. But
yeah, it would be interesting to see all these graphics without such a big outlier as SoftBank. Yeah, because it might be distorting many things, but yeah.
So just rather than going over these exits here, I would actually ask you, well, what are some of the exits you guys have achieved? Because you said that you've exited about 60 companies, and some of the things that you're proud of.
So yeah, we're proud of many of those exits. You have to consider that Wayra invests in early stage, and even when we began investing in 2011, many of the companies that we supported were companies that were just an idea or a PPT presentation. So having 60 exits already, it's something that we're proud of, being able to sell that and to find those entrepreneurs, to find their business models, defining their product, and going to the market.
I think, yeah, we're proud of Quantena's IPO in Nasdaq, which is an investment that we did in Silicon Valley. We're very proud of a fintech company that was called Trustee, coming from our portfolio in Ireland, which was also a big success. The same with a couple of data analytic companies in Latin American markets, which we sold. I'm not sure if I can name the companies that bought them, but there were companies in the media sector, and that they were like second screen solutions, and yeah, those were also good exits. Those are a couple of them that are coming to my mind. But again, yeah, they're not comparable to the IPOs of Uber or the big ones that SoftBank were supporting. So
although some people said that Uber's IPO was a bit disappointing, because they were aiming to, the investment syndicate was the bankers.
Yeah, you can have a webinar just about that.
Uber IPO on just that. But,
yeah.
So if we look at also the funding initiatives, we try to track funding initiatives that have some corporate involvement, whether it's VC funds with some corporate LPs, newly launched CVC units, accelerators, incubators, and so on. We do see that the ones that are that seem to be focused on telecoms, or have telecoms as one of their areas of investment focus, seem to be kind of going down from 2016 onwards. So now we are yet to see what's going to happen by the end of this year. In terms of the money involved, obviously we have the two big outliers in terms of the two big vision funds. But I'd really like to ask you about the three different structures, at least three that you have. So we have Wayra, which is the global accelerator. You have Telefónica Ventures, which does minority stake investments that are probably beyond seed, sort of so early and mid stage, and then you have the Amerigo Fund, which invests in other, which is a fund of funds. So
So Telefónica Innovation is investments. Yeah.
Would you briefly tell us about those three?
I would quickly go. Yeah, Wayra, it was launched as an accelerator. We're not an accelerator anymore. We were that in the past because in many of the markets in which we were operating, no one was supporting startups, and they did not even know what an accelerator was. So we supported them in terms of business tools that they could be needing. But now, since 3 years ago, we're fully a business development program. So companies that come into Wayra should be already accelerated, and we want third parties that might do that better than us to do that. So we fully focus on making them work with Telefónica, which is our unique value proposition and the things that makes us different. And we're investing bigger amounts, is up to 200K in each of the startups, and we are following a co-investment thesis. We're investing with venture capital funds. So that has allowed Wayra to stop doing seed stage investment, and we're entering Series A. When it comes to Telefónica Ventures, it's they're investing in things that are super strategic to our core assets, which are mainly networks and platforms, and each of those investments conducted through Telefónica Ventures should come with a clear sponsorship and a roadmap from a business unit or a global strategic unit. And we usually invest, I think, between 1 million and 5 million, average ticket around 1.5 and 2 million. And we're entering rounds Bs or around Bs. And with and with Telefónica investment funds, which were the former Amerigo funds, it's a fund of funds, and we're LPs in different growth stage funds, meaning Series B or maybe it depends on the geography and the market matureness, but some of them invest more in Series A. others in Series B or C, like our Investec fund in Brazil, which is investing in bigger companies. But what we have is like an end-to-end approach to open innovation and venture capital tools, so we can support talent regardless the maturity stage. We can address really young companies and also mature companies that have already conquered the market or several.
Yeah, so you have a truly diverse and diversified innovation toolkit. External innovation toolkit, I should say, because you do have your internal R&D here at Telefónica.
Yeah,
of course. And we're nearly at the end of the presentation. Well, the very last slide that I have is a deal flow in university spin-offs from the telecom sector. And it's been very, very few. So I just wanted to ask you, do you see any interesting innovation coming out of universities, perhaps in Spain and Latin America, certainly in the UK and in Germany, and the sort of countries that you're present in? And how often do you source innovation from academia? That's going to be my last question for at least for the moment.
Okay, great. So yeah, I think in Latin markets, university might be a bit further from business world than in Anglo-Saxon markets, and you can feel that. But they're terrific researchers and developers in universities. And we have at least, I'm thinking about 6 or 7 investments that are spin-outs from universities and that have raised financing rounds from financial investors and are doing very well. Many of them in Spain, some of them in Latin America. When it comes to Anglo-Saxon world, I can talk about what's happening in the UK with our programs, for example, with Edinburgh University. We have launched with them and with other corporates, but it's a program that's led by Wayra, an artificial intelligence accelerator and venture capital fund, and it's working very well. And there are many things that are coming from Edinburgh University, which is very good in artificial intelligence. And it's the same with other programs around cybersec, intelligent mobility, where we have also we like working close to universities and stick to what they do. When it comes to business schools, we also have the business schools that are partnering with us in order to
There's definitely symbiosis between Telefónica and the academic world.
Yeah, it is, and yeah, I think it's a challenge that we have, at least in the Latin countries. We have to bring it to come closer, both the academic world and the enterprise world.
What are the biggest? I'm going to try to have this as my very last question, but what are some of the challenges in emerging economies of bringing and scaling innovation coming out of universities?
I think it's a matter of cultural barriers and mindset. I think, academics and researchers, they're not thinking about doing business, and I think that has to do with career development procedures or processes that we've got in Latin universities. Whenever you research more, you will prosper and you will become catedrátic. It's not the same in other countries, in Anglo-Saxon, in which also being close to business or doing other things can also contribute to growing within the academic world. So yeah, I think we at times we speak different language. So good technologies, no business plan or no business case behind. It's all. I think it's all about culture.
And that sort of concludes my presentation and all of my questions at the moment. Jim, if you're still on the line and if you would like to ask probably one more question before we close off.
Yes, thanks, Kaloyan, and thank you once again, Agustín. That was really fascinating insight. So just one for me, and then we've actually got a couple in from some of the listeners to the webinar as well, so perhaps we can rattle through very briefly. One of the things that I've really noticed about the telco sector is it seems to have developed a very good track record, not just for exits, but also being able to attract external funding into the sector. And that's led to a number of different telcos almost raising third-party money. Obviously, SoftBank is probably the best well-known, but if you think about Swisscom, They've raised institutional limited partner money from pension funds. Deutsche Telekom in Germany has raised other corporate money from South Korea, as well as other money for its Telecom capital partners. Telstra Ventures, slightly different route. The parents sold off part of the portfolio to Harbour Best, and they've provided more capital for future funds. So, given that Telefónica and Wayra has 60 exits, is this something you've thought about, raising external funding to expand your own portfolio, Agustín, or maybe you're just thinking about the external money to support the portfolio companies later on down the track? So have you thought about this?
Yeah, that's a good one, Jim. And yeah, for sure we thought about that. I think that's a super good question to my venture capital funds colleagues here in Telefónica. In my view, and as I was discussing previously with Kaloyan, I think when you're pursuing or when you're using your venture capital capacities to bring innovation, having a financial investor might distort your goal and might push you to invest in things that might be super good in terms of return on investment, but not so good for your company. So that's my personal view, and as far as we've done, we've only worked by investing Telefónica's money, but yeah, you never know, and for sure, yeah, partnering is the future. So we're always open to consider many options.
Perfect, thank you. And then June, Choi has asked, since telecom is important for all tech, as we get more connected, are there any industries you are not investing in?
We're not investing in. No, we have no restrictions. So yeah, maybe things that might bring reputational issues to us, but so we don't do betting business or gambling, all that. It's not something that Telefónica does. Yeah, we're really committed to the countries and to the development of the countries in which we operate, and yeah, that's not the type of business which might be great in terms of return on investment, but those are not the business that we're looking for. But apart from that, I don't think we've got any type of restrictions. So we're open to look into any investment that can bring value to our business.
Perfect. And then perhaps a follow-up to that point about the reputation. There's obviously an increased focus on sort of sustainable development goals from the United Nations and sort of climate change. Are there any innovations you're seeing, developed around perhaps that sort of impact investment theme, social and/or environmental, that you think telcos are particularly focused on helping with? I'm struggling to think of things, but perhaps around refugee communications, what 3 words, or being able to develop more secure communication lines in troubled areas. Are there anything caused by climate change that you think is interesting from a telco point of view?
Yeah, it is. So we have verticalized programs that are around the impact technologies. So we have Wayra Unlimited in the UK in the past, which was investing in social impact companies, and we've got this program that's called Fair by Design, also in the UK, that's called to close the poverty bridge. Or the poverty premium bridge, why people with less resources are paying more than people with more resources for basic services like electricity or whatever. But I think when it comes, if you see our portfolio so wide, you can find many of the companies that we're investing in, which might be, from example, from the agro sector. They're dealing with better usage of water or better usage of natural resources. The same when it comes to energy. The same when it comes to connecting people. And Internet para Todos, which is internet for everyone, it's a project that's also led by Telefónica, in which Facebook is part, and we're trying to take connectivity to rural areas or to areas that in which deploying usual network is not efficient in terms of investment. And we're also building from the Open Innovation Unit solutions and bringing solutions that can add up to that strategy. So I think nowadays everything's around being more sustainable.
even if we do not say it, if you have a look in our portfolio, I guess more than 50% of our companies are helping the world to be more efficient.
Perfect. And anything related to that sort of resiliency question, if there's climate change and more severe hurricanes or something like that, how do you develop a more resilient network? Is that things around blockchain, or is it things around sort of more 5G posts? Is there anything on that side?
So yeah, when it comes to tech, in Latin America and in rural areas, what we're trying to do is deploying networks, but not the networks provided, the typical ones provided by vendors, but the ones provided by rural providers, which are much more lean and easier to deploy, and in cases of disasters or whatever, can also much more easily be rebuilt. No specific things that comes to my mind, but we collaborate with United Nations and we have launched challenges through our platforms when we had like the last earthquakes in Latin America. So but it's not more just the Open Innovation Unit that's about Telefónica, and we've been very much committed to the countries in which we operate, and we are always eager to help.
Wonderful. Well, that's perfect for me. So thank you very much. Mindful we're a little over the hour mark. I'll hand back to Kaloyan to conclude and prepare for the next one. But let me finish from my end by saying thank you, Kaloyan, for all the hard work that's gone into preparing for this, and obviously thank you for the preparation and the insights, Agustín. Thank you.
To you, Jim, and to the audience, and to Kaloyan.
So thank you on my behalf and on behalf of Global Corporate Venturing for having us here to do this webinar, particularly at this hour, because it's almost 8 p.m. here in Spain. So thank you very much. Thanks everyone. Thanks to once again to everyone who was able to join in live. Of course, this webinar and the materials will be sent out and will be made available by Global Corporate Venturing probably within the next day or two. And then the very last thing that I would like to say is stay tuned for our next webinar, which is going to be on the energy sector sometime around mid-October. And have a wonderful day, night, or afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. Thank you.